Yeah, sure. I work here at the Bermuda Eye Institute for Dr. Teobachoy, and we have two offices, one here on Point Finger Road and one at Front Street. So I was going to a meeting little before lunch. I think around 11:30 I left to walk to the other office. And I was walking down Front Street past the gas station. That's where I was when it all began. I had my headphones on, so I wasn't able to hear the crash, but I saw off in the distance something happened, and all of a sudden I know about a second later things started falling right in front of me from the telephone poles. Wires started swinging past me, and what I imagined was transformers or some type of boxes on the poles actually started falling right in front of me. So I didn't know what happened at first. I thought maybe it was an earthquake because I was probably a good 150 feet from the bus. So I started running because these wires, and I could, even despite my headphones, could hear the electricity like going off all around me. So my first inclination was just to get away from these wires. As I started running about 50 feet in front of me, I saw the bus. And it was just horrible to see. It had just happened, so there was still smoke coming up and all that. And I don't know, it's hard to remember exactly what I was thinking at the time, but I heard people screaming from the bus. That's the first thing I remember. And they were screaming, "There's kids on board." That's the one phrase I remember in my head. So I immediately started going towards the bus, which was covered in wires, and the pole was actually on top of the bus at that point. And there was wires just everywhere going off. And someone actually yelled at me, "Don't go near it, don't go near it." But once I heard that there was people in there, all I could think of, I don't know if there's gasoline leaking, there's a transformer sparking on top of it, this bus goes up in flames. I just couldn't live with myself if I didn't do something. So I started trying to, the other thing about it is the bus door was actually pinned against the building, so they couldn't get out the door. I saw that immediately. So I started trying to get the windows down. The bus, I'm a pretty tall guy, I'm 6'3", but the bus windows were even above my head, and we can only get them down about halfway. So someone on the bus actually was able to get one of the windows down about 3/4 of the way, but it was on the other side, the damaged side of the bus, which means I actually had to go through the wires behind the bus. So I actually had to kind of maneuver my way between the sparking wires to get to the other side, which was pretty crazy. And then they just started handing me children. I was at the beginning, I was the first one there, and luckily I was tall enough to actually grab the children. As soon as I started grabbing them, and they were about 4 or 5 years old, I guess it must have been I'm hearing it might have been like a school trip or something like that. So I started grabbing the kids and putting them on the ground, but they started taking off. They were all frenzied and running right towards the wire. So I'm like holding 2 kids in one arm, like they're 4. How do you explain to them, what's going on? And taking kids off with my other arm. Luckily they were light. Eventually one other guy did come, and I started handing him the kids and just telling him bring them to safety. So we got all the kids off initially. Luckily by the time, and there's about 15 kids, all about 4 or 5 years old. By the time we got them off, more people had come to help. I guess they saw that he and I were there, and we had about 6 or 7 guys over there at one point. Luckily, because once the older people started trying to get through the window, I don't know how I would have done it by myself. So there were some elderly people on the bus. It wasn't even the weight of holding them, it was actually getting them through the window. I mean, they just couldn't get through it. I mean, so the people inside the bus actually started help picking their legs up and putting it through the window, and then we would catch them on the other side. And this whole time, you got to remember, wires are swinging by our heads. There was a wire probably about a foot above the window where I had to hold people's heads down, because if they sprung up when they went through the window, it would have got them. And there was probably about 25 people total on the bus, 15 kids, I would say, and 10 older people. You know, I wasn't the only one there. I was the first one there, but it was a group effort, definitely.